After days of tension and turmoil, the streets of Kathmandu are beginning to breathe again. The scent of incense drifts through the alleys of Durbar Square. Oil lamps flicker under fading sunlight. And in the midst of this delicate calm, a historic first. Nepal has appointed its first woman prime minister. Her name is Sushila Karki, a former Chief Justice, a fierce constitutionalist, and now the interim leader of a nation grappling with corruption, youth unrest, and fading public trust. Her swearing in has sent ripples not just through the political corridors of Kathmandu, but through the collective psyche of a country long ruled by a rotating cast of male leaders. This moment didn't arrive quietly. Just days before, the capital witnessed some of the most intense anti-corruption protests in recent memory. Sparked largely by Nepal's Gen Z, young people disillusioned by years of stagnation, scandal and political theatre. The demonstrations grew rapidly, curfews were imposed, streets were blocked, social media swelled with calls for accountability. But amid the anger, there was clarity, a demand for leadership that is transparent, inclusive and rooted in the rule of law. It's no coincidence that many of the protesters saw in Sushila Karki a glimmer of those values. As a former judge, she has long been known for her tough stances against political interference and her independence on the bench. For years, she was an outsider to Nepal's party politics, a trait now seen as an asset rather than a liability. Her rise marks more than just a victory for gender representation. It signals a shift, however fragile, toward governance that respects the constitution and public service, not personal enrichment. In Durbar Square, the signs of a city recovering are subtle but unmistakable. A rickshaw driver leans back in his seat, a worn Nepali flag fluttering beside him. Children feed pigeons, vendors pour tea, newspapers with bold headlines, Karki becomes first female PM, pass from hand to hand. And yet, underneath the surface, there remains a cautiousness. A nation does not change overnight, but what has changed is the conversation. In interviews, everyday citizens express a mix of pride, hope and wary optimism. Social worker Suraj Patarai, 51, says what many are thinking, that this moment belongs not just to Karki, but to the young people who pushed her there. It is exciting for us that Gen Z is raising issues of corruption, he says. We think this female Prime Minister, our former Chief Justice, will address Nepal's fight against corruption and take good governance forward. For Patarai and others, the protests weren't just noise. They were a necessary disruption, a wake-up call to the establishment, one that carried a warning, ignore the youth at your own risk. He continues, when young people unite against corruption, the youth in our neighbouring countries may also come together. So our neighbouring countries should listen and understand the views of youth and address them. That is important. His point resonates across South Asia, where dynastic politics and elite power structures continue to dominate. Could Nepal's youth uprising serve as a template, or at least a spark? Businessman Shikhar Bajracharya, 32, believes Karki's legal background is precisely what's needed. She understands the law, the constitution, he says. She can be the one who brings something good out of this youth movement. But Bajracharya is under no illusions about the depth of the rot. He reflects on years of political stagnation following the fall of the monarchy, when power shifted from kings to party bosses, but little else changed. They were playing musical chairs, he says, naming three dominant figures, Khadga Prasad Sharma Oli, Pushpa Kamal Dahal, and Sher Bahadur Dubba. They made it so that ordinary people or young leaders could never dream of becoming Prime Minister. To him, the appointment of Karki, an independent woman with no political dynasty behind her, breaks that pattern. It's symbolic, yes, but also strategic. A break from the old ways, a crack in the wall. Still, the days leading to her swearing in were marked by tension. The protests, though driven by peaceful intent, were marred by opportunism. Lootings occurred, public property was damaged, and some blame politically motivated actors for co-opting the movement. In the name of Gen Z, Bajracharya says, there were lootings. But I believe those were carried out by people already involved in politics and not by the real protesters. This too reflects the fragility of Nepal's political moment. The line between genuine protest and political sabotage is thin, and the risk of backlash from both entrenched elites and the international community is real. But for now, the city breathes. temples reopen, the morning buzz returns, vendors craft garlands with fresh marigolds, priests resume rituals, and amidst it all, Karki enters office, not with triumph, but with quiet determination. Observers note that her interim government may only last until fresh elections, but her influence could be far more enduring. Her presence has already altered the political imagination, not just because she's a woman, but because she's not part of the usual game. She represents, for many, a model of governance that is less interested in power and more committed to justice. A leader whose legitimacy stems not from backroom deals or party manoeuvring, but from a proven record of integrity. Still, the road ahead is steep. Restoring trust will require more than symbolic gestures. It will require bold action, auditing state contracts, prosecuting corrupt officials, protecting whistleblowers, and strengthening institutions long weakened by patronage and nepotism. It will also require something more intangible, a shift in the culture of governance, a belief that politics is not a path to personal enrichment, but to public service. That's a vision Nepal's youth are demanding, and it's the vision Karki is now expected to pursue. The appointment of a woman prime minister in Nepal, a nation with deep patriarchal traditions, is no small feat. But it is also just the beginning. Her success or failure will depend not just on her leadership, but on the ability of civil society, youth movements and ordinary citizens to hold the system accountable. The protests may have quieted, but the call for change echoes on. In temples, in tea houses, in parliament. The question now is not whether history has been made, but whether it can be sustained. Nepal today stands at a crossroads. The world is watching.
इस दफ़ा भी नेपाल में फर्स्ट वुमेन प्राइम मिनिस्टर आई है और वो हम लोग इतना एक्साइटिंग है कि वो नेपाल की जो अभी इस तरह से भ्रष्टाचार की जो लड़के लोग ने उठा रहा है जेनजी के नाम करके इन लोग ने जिस तरह से ये इशू उठाया है इसको ये लड़की ये महिला प्रधानमंत्री जो कि पिछले दिनों ये चीफ जस्टिस भी हो चुकी है इनसे नेपाल की ये भ्रष्टाचारी और ये जो बेथिति सुशासन की कायम आगे बढ़ेगी मैं ऐसे विश्वास रखता हूँ। युवा लोग जब उबलते हैं करप्शन की ओर जैसे नेपाल में यहाँ करप्शन की ओर एकजुट हुए थे ना क्या हमारी और पड़ोसी लोग के युवा नहीं है वो भी तो वैसे हो सकता है ना इसलिए हमारी पड़ोसी देश भी अपनी युवा की भावना सुने बुझे और उससे उसके मार्ग संबोधन करे उस तरफ से लागना जरूरी है।
I think she is the main candidate who can understand the law, who can understand the constitution of Nepal, and who can do a good thing for this movement, which movement was carried by youth. After throwing the monarchies, they were playing musical chair game. You know, three leaders, three parties, they were playing musical chair games. They are making such a rule in the constitution, act in the constitution, that there is no possible for the people, the younger people or the people who are not involved in politics, came and became a prime minister of country. From 3 or 4 days, Nepal has been in very bad situation. In the name of Zenjis, there were so many lootings, which was done by the, which was done by the politically involved people, because